Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Well, hello, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners. We've got a very special guest today. I will be interviewing Linda Fodrini-Johnson. Linda has been practicing as a geriatric care manager, or also known as an aging life care expert, since 1984. And she's licensed by the state of California as a marriage and family therapist as well, and is certified as a care manager. And what we're going to be talking about today is a lot of just talk about around care management, what to do if you are a kid and your parents may need some help, a lot of cognitive decline. So we're going to talk about the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's. And the reason that Linda is doing this is because Linda actually saw her parents struggling with aging, and she went back to college while still having some kids. She had 3 small children at that time to pursue her vision to be a professional that could guide families like hers to avoid some of those potholes and misinformation and help them find peace in the course of being a family caregiver. So after obtaining her degrees and completing her internships, she became one of the first geriatric care managers for her county. And soon after, she started the very first Alzheimer's respite program and then opened her own business, which is called Elder Care Services. And she's got a book that she has authored as well, which is called The Empowered Caregiver: Practical Advice and Emotional Support for Adult Children and Aging Parents. And we will be offering that as a giveaway. Linda's actually been so generous to offer a lot of giveaways for us today. So that's great. And the way that you're going to get access to all of them is going to be leave an honest review out on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Copy and paste that into an email to asknate@retirementrescueradio.com and include which one of those that you are asking for. If it's the book, we'll actually send a hard copy to you until we've got them all gone. But we'll also have a link to Amazon because she said it's a very inexpensive book. So if we run out, you'll still be able to get it. And then also several other things as far as a list on how to communicate with someone who might have Alzheimer's. And then she has a method of questioning to ask if you are among if you're among siblings, to talk to people that may have Alzheimer's or learn how to deal with people that may have Alzheimer's. And then some loving kindness meditation as well. So a lot of giveaways that she's offering here. So definitely snatch those up. And again, leave an honest review out on iTunes, copy and paste that into an email at asknate@retirementrescueradio.com, and we'll get all of that out to you. So without further ado, here's my interview with Linda Fodrini-Johnson. Well, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners, we've got a very special guest with us today. We've got Linda Fodrini-Johnson with us. Linda, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Great. Thanks for taking the time here. Are you ready to help rescue some retirements?
Here I am.
Great. So, before we launch into anything, I always ask my interviewees a question to help my audience get to know you a little bit better on a personal level, and maybe something that you can't find out there on the internet. Is there anything unique or interesting about you that we may not be able to find readily on your website or anywhere else?
A great question, because I was looking at my resume and thinking, oh, these things are boring. But what I did put on my resume at one point, when I was an adult and had a couple of kids at home, I worked at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, the old home of the Giants, selling hot dogs.
Yeah. So you were the hot dog vendor, huh?
Yeah, in a booth. I didn't have to walk up and down the stairs, but it was very interesting.
So how many games did you get to go to then for doing that?
Oh, probably the whole season. I went to every game.
Nice.
And you can wander out. You have breaks and you hear what's going on.
Yep. I think one year for a business club that I was in college, we were at a Royals game and we got to do, I can't remember what it was that we were selling there. I think we actually sold a bunch of things. We were just part of the entire concession. So it was beer, hot dogs, hamburgers, you name it. And then part of the proceeds went to that club. So fun.
Wow. It is. It was.
Well, great. So, this has been a passion of yours since really the 80s. And so that's been quite a while. Why has this been such a passion for you for so long?
Interesting you ask, because I saw my parents struggling with my dad's mom and dad and my mother's mother. My grandfather on my mother's side had died earlier. And they had 3 teenagers. I was out of the house and early married, and I'm just starting my family. And they were going in all kinds of directions without any guidance or coaching or direction or support. So when I went back to college, after I had those little kids, I decided I wanted to do something to help people on this aging journey, whether it's the adult children, whether it's spouses. It's just got to be a better way. So that was my early career education is social work. My license is a family therapist, and then I'm certified as a geriatric care manager, now called aging life care specialist. Anyway, that's my path.
Well, good deal. And so our demographic is mostly retirees, and so those that are already aging, and so we find out there's just a lot more to learn about aging than we thought. So why do we need to be educated on aging? We all age. So, why do we need to be educated on it?
One of the classes I teach is called Aging with Eyes Wide Open. That's why we need the education. We don't want to go down the path of our parents necessarily, unless you have 90-year-olds that are competing in relay races or, as parents, then probably you don't need to worry. But most of us don't have that genetic package. We all are individuals. So if we take responsibility in our 50s or 60s, we have a chance to turn around all that bad stuff we did in our earlier ages. That's good by learning. That is good news. Drink that coffee. It's caffeine free, right? And organic. Sure. But even those that have parents with dementia, that's often an incredible worry for the adult children I work with as they're trying to organize and orchestrate a strategy. So even if you have that genetic marker, you could do things like there's like 4 elements. Change your diet to a mind diet. There are mind diets out there and they're not hard. Exercise regularly and make sure it's aerobic. Work on balance so you don't fall. Even if you're standing at the kitchen counter, stand on one leg. Again, for your brain, brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. So there's all kinds of things you can do. Meditation is important. Mindfulness, even the medical teams are telling us to do some sort of form of meditation, whether it's yoga or meditation exercises, something. Be in the woods, like behind me, forest bathe, and then stay engaged. The biggest mistake that retirees make, especially you guys, not so much for the women, but most of the guys have focused it only on their career. And once they retire, if they don't get engaged, that downhill slope goes quickly. So join the Rotary, be a part of the Lions Club, work at the food bank, do some volunteer activities, learn a new craft, learn to play a musical instrument. These are all things that keep your brain healthy and your body. So that was a long answer to your short question. So
when you say get engaged, you're talking stay socially engaged. You don't necessarily have to get remarried.
You don't necessarily have to get remarried. You could be a swinging single, I guess, or a content single, not swinging. And that's your choice. Yeah.
You're absolutely right, too, because I can tell already my wife has a better network of friends, or keeps up with her network of friends better than I do, because a lot of times it's head down, forward to work, and that's about it. So one of my initiatives is to make sure that we spend a lot more time with friends rather than just, with our, our own little bubbles. Yeah.
Exactly. Very healthy. And with groups, and volunteering extends the length of your life, and staying in some sort of connection with spirituality, whatever that is, also extends your life.
So you're talking about balancing on one leg. You can't see it right now on the Zoom, but that's what I'm doing right now. As soon as you said that, I'm just shifting back and forth from left to right.
Yeah, it's so important, because fall, you healthy 65-year-old that's, still running those marathons or swimming your 10 laps a day, if you fall, everything changes in your life,
Yep.
Especially if they don't repair that hip correctly. And that's the other thing you need. Really important, Nate, is an advocate that knows your wishes and wants when that crisis, that surprise crisis happens.
So you're talking about attorney?
Yeah, power of attorney, advanced healthcare directives for health in every state. And the University of California, I'll send you this link, Nate, the UC Regents have a great form. And I tell you, it's great because it's in large font, because those of us over 60 need large font. It has clip art in it, and it really forces you to think about all the dilemmas that health might present to you, or life, the trip and falls that aren't part of your genetic package. So keep balancing on that one leg.
Well, going down that same route. So there's a gal in my martial arts class. I think she's definitely in her 70s. I don't think she's in her 80s yet, but I mean, she may not be as flexible as some of the rest of us, but if I'm doing what she's doing in my upper 70s or 80s or whatever, I think we'll be doing just fine. She is kicking butt at that age.
Exactly. And it starts with just a little bit of effort. You don't have to go to where that lady is that's in your class. Yeah. You just start with a 2-pound weight and you go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, great. So I want to ask this question, because I've heard a lot of people ask this, and I've even had this question myself, because my grandfather on my dad's side had dementia. And this was before I was really in the financial industry. So it wasn't like I was asking a lot of questions like, hey, what's the difference between dementia? Is it Alzheimer's, or is it just dementia? I thought they were the same. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Glad you asked that question. That's so common that people don't know. My mother doesn't have Alzheimer's. She has dementia. And I'm going, dementia is like you telling me she's a fruit. But I want to know if she's an apple, a pear, or a grape. Okay. So Alzheimer's is a dementia, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia. Those are the 4 primary dementias. Okay. The major dementia is Alzheimer's disease. And that's why people need a good workup when they start showing symptoms to find out which dementia they have, because some are really enhanced by the new drugs. It helps them function better and longer. And others are made worse by some drugs. So you don't want to give a drug that's going to make hallucination and delusions more so, like which is hallmarked with lots of falls and very vivid dreams. So, and the Lewy body dementia, I'm just jumping into this one because a lot of people don't know about it. Also, the person is very, very clear and very, very sharp. And then the next day, they might not recognize anybody. So it's really hard for families. They think that their family member is going crazy. Anyway.
Okay. So
do you get it?
So Alzheimer's is dementia, but not
is a dementia.
Yeah. Okay. Almost like all wolves are canines, but not all canines are wolves. Kind of like that.
Perfect analogy.
All right, great. And so now you say your field's relatively new. So with all the advancements now that are helping us live a lot longer, how do you see this concept of caregiving evolving? It
has to evolve where we have more teams of caregivers in our social network. And I say this because there's currently a shortage of caregivers across the country, those that work for agencies. You call an agency and want somebody for 20 hours a week because your spouse is I just talked to somebody that their spouse just had some hip surgery, and she needs some support because she can't do all that he needs her to help with. And he doesn't have any dementia. He just has this one physical thing that he's dealing with. And just go to your social network and see if they know somebody or they're willing to share with you. I think that's another reason to stay engaged, because you're going to get support from neighbors and friends and maybe your family's at a distance. So this whole caregiving issue, again, I teach a lot of classes, of course, for caregivers of people dealing with dementia. But the other important thing, Nate, besides building that network, your own little support network, because you might not be able to call the Happy Hills caregiving agency and they might not be able to deliver. The future is going to be a little bleak unless we do something. And even if Medicare decides to pay for it, there's nobody to hire, So again, we need to kind of build that with one another. And then the other thing is spouses, you guys that are married, you need to promise one another that you will accept help if you need it. Because often what happens, Nate, is they say, no, you can do it all. I don't want a stranger in my house. So don't do that to your spouse. Because if your spouse burns out, where are you? If your spouse dies of a heart attack, stressed by your care, where are you? In that skilled nursing, you don't want to end up there. Right. So you got to promise one another in your advanced healthcare directive. And I did this in mine. My husband followed my guidance and he did it too, that we said we would hire somebody if we needed help, just in case our mind went south. It's in the legal document to remind us that that's what we wanted when we can think clearly.
Yeah. And everybody's not in the situation to where their spouse might even be able to help, even if they want to. I mean, my wife, she could, if she, if she wanted to, she wouldn't even be able to. I'm like 200 and some pounds. She's 5'4" and 100 pounds. So like, if she needs to move me, it ain't happening. So
it's not happening.
Yeah. And of course, as she gets older, her strength is not even going to be where it's at right now. So it's like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So we've already said that that's going to have to happen. And so with all this, you mentioned caregiving, and it sounds like not only are they having the same issues that I think everybody's having, it's just hard to find people to work. It sounds like they've had that problem even before the pandemic and the recent job issues. And so go ahead. Talk about that for a little bit.
No, I was going to say during the pandemic, agencies wouldn't let you hire part-time. You had to hire full-time because they only wanted to send one person to your house. Because of especially before the vaccinations. After vaccinations, that loosened up a little bit.
Okay. And so there's a lot of different aspects of caregiving. I mean, you've got nursing homes, you got assisted living, CCRCs, home health care, you name it, right? With all those different ones. And you're what's called a certified geriatric care manager. Explain a little bit about what that is and really, I mean, it's probably a lot broader than what people think, but what does that really do? How do you really help?
Think of me as a Sherpa or the hub of a wheel. We make everything go, right? And we make you get to your goal based on when I'm meeting with somebody, I want to know what their values are, what their wishes are, what their hopes are. And that's where we're going to go. I can't bring you back to a 40-year-old, but I can help you have the highest quality of life possible. And those of us who practice this field of geriatric care management, and the National Association is now called the Aging Life Care Association, where you put in your zip code and you can find somebody. But I'm telling you to find somebody that has an advanced degree related to health and human services. I get those two backwards. I have a degree in family therapy, so I can work with complex families. And I also have a degree in social work. So I know the resources and I can help people access them. And I can work with your strengths to get you where you want to go, basically. And I'm glad you brought up that, oh my God, there's so many choices in senior living.
Mhm.
Where do I choose? Or where do I choose? You 60 and 70-year-olds, you might still have parents. A lot of you still are caring for parents that are in their 90s. What are the choices for them? And at the same time that you're looking for them, think about your own aging future. Would you like a CCRC, which again, we're using alphabet soup,
Yeah.
but it's continuing care communities, retirement communities, and they have 3 levels of care, and you buy in. So you sell your home and you have to plunk down a chunk of cash. It could be 300,000, it could be $500,000, maybe even more, depending on
Swanky
the
you wanna
area
go.
of the country. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of my clients in the past who are single people or those that never had children or have no family, that's their choice. And sometimes it's a good choice, and I will point people in that direction. Other times, it's not the right financial choice for somebody. But can they live in a community where they can get community services if they're really lower income? If they're middle income and they work with a great financial planner and they have great assets, then you have your choice of all the different assisted living. So you have to think about what's important to you. What are your values? What gives your life meaning? And can that community, can that retirement community meet that? Do they have a swimming pool if you're a swimmer? Do they have a place that you could hike close by? Can you walk to stores? Do they have their own transportation? Should you not be able to drive? All of the things that can happen, think about them as if they happened when you're making this choice, and ask good questions.
Okay. So then the next question I would ask as you're explaining, what it is that you do. You say you're like the hub, so people can come to you and you can kind of direct them where they
Right.
need to go based on what those needs are. When
Mhm.
would someone want to come to you? When should someone come to you to get all of that?
Hmm.
Like,
Interesting, because now that I'm semi-retired, I had a bigger business and sold it 3 years ago, and I'm doing something called roadmaps.
Mhm.
So I see people in their 60s and 70s that just want a roadmap. This is where we are now. We're in our own home. We hope to stay here, but we're realistic that something could happen to one of us, and we don't have a support system, or we do have a support system. One of the things I'm seeing as I do those roadmaps for people, and just interestingly, in the last, I think, couple of months, at least 2 of my clients have decided to move closer to their children
Mhm.
and participate in the grandchildren's lives, because that's the most important thing for them.
Mhm.
So this house of 35 years that they've lived in, they're selling because what's most important to them is these grandchildren and seeing them grow up. So they're making that choice. And then I find them a Sherpa in that area because life continues, this long life that we all want.
Mhm.
So they have somebody. Once I work with a family like that, I either become their coach when things go south, whatever it is. They need a new eye doctor. They're looking, somebody just called me this week and said, should I keep this insurance? I have, whole life and I have term insurance and one of them's really expensive. Should I keep that or should I buy long-term care insurance with stopping one? So helping them do the math of that besides making that decision. So they get a little bit complex sometimes. Not that I am going to be an insurance advisor. I'm going to redirect them back to the insurance advisor.
Mhm.
But to help look at what do they have? What do they want? What do I think they need? And this gentleman was telling me that the long-term care insurance policy that he was being offered was just for 3 years. Let me tell you, as a professional in the field,
Mhm.
sometimes when people move to retirement living, they get healthier and they live a long time. That diabetic person is now got a controlled diet. The person that's maybe not doesn't have a dementia but has problems with memory is getting their medications on the right time and the right day. They live healthy and they're engaged socially.
Mhm.
So my advice there is find a policy that would pay for at least 5 years.
Okay.
That's my experience with lots of people, or the majority of people move to assisted living or independent living that has / assisted living available.
Yep. And because we've heard that Alzheimer's or, dementia, that it can be a really long time if they're pretty healthy also otherwise, then they could actually be in a home or some type of assisted living scenario for quite a while. I mean, what are some of the time frames that you're normally seeing, if other than like the 5 years that you just mentioned? Is there anything that you're normally seeing longer if they're pretty healthy?
Yeah, if you're very healthy and then have Alzheimer's disease, and this does happen, people are physically healthy, but their brain is not functioning at all levels that it should. They could live up to 20 years from diagnosis to death. And I'll tell you why.
It's a long time.
When your brain isn't functioning, you are not worried about tomorrow and you don't feel guilty about yesterday. You are in the moment. And that's nirvana, right? To be in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to our body health then, Nate, is we don't have stress. Stress at some point in the dementia, there's a lot of stress in the beginning, but you get in that middle stage and you're just in the mountains at Lake Almanor,
Yeah.
you are just really in the moment. And most of the major diseases that cause the end of our life, the cardiac issues and cancer, are stress related. So these people live longer. Even those that had maybe a diagnosis of something even live longer because there's no stress in their life.
So there's lower instances of cardiac issues, lower instances of cancer issues, even
Yes.
when
Yeah.
someone gets Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So are we saying it's the cure for cancer is just get Alzheimer's?
I don't know. I don't know if I would make that choice.
I wouldn't put it that way either, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's not, I haven't read that. That's been my experience since.
That is not, I am not a medical profession. This is where I need a little disclosure going across the bottom line.
Yes, I'm not a medical disclosure. I have watched and been with families since 1984, basically, is when I started doing this work. And every, I think, medical discipline now often talks about mindfulness and the value of meditation and being in the moment. So there is definitely high correlation in the medical journals about relaxation and reducing stress. I have that as one of my bullet points, is to eliminate stress. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's even possible, but it is possible in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we can eliminate it. It's just we have to figure out a better way of handling it. I think that's it. Our response to it.
When I'm just reminiscing, one of the things that my husband and I had this business for 30 years of geriatric care management and home care and family education. And so we worked in the business together. He had his MBA from Berkeley. I had my clinical degree. We were a great team, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would not let me talk about business at home at all. Not after 6 o'clock. Not on Saturday and Sunday. And I used to grumble about it, but that was really good advice.
I'm gonna have to start.
And good for us.
I tend not to have, I keep my business hours and actually when I'm doing business pretty regimented, but I will definitely talk about it afterwards. So I probably need to do a better job of shutting that off, I guess.
Yeah, if you can, I recommend it.
Sure. Okay. Well, so recognizing an Alzheimer's or dementia or any type of like memory decline is probably easy to do for those that we know pretty well, because we know how they are. We can recognize if something's kind of a little bit off. is there any possibility of recognizing this in ourselves?
Yes, and it usually isn't of the Alzheimer variety. People with vascular dementia um, might be able to say, there's something wrong with my memory. I'm going to go see somebody. Somebody with dementia says there's something with their vision, their eyes, or you're causing it. You're making me lose my keys. You took my coffee cup. That's what they do in the early stages. But those with the other dementias are going to say, there's something wrong or something off, and probably go get a diagnosis themselves. And their families might say, you're just fine, you're stressed, So they go off and get the diagnosis. And what would happen then, probably, even if they're going down this path, they would get a diagnosis called mild cognitive impairment, MCI.
Mm-hmm.
And those that get mild cognitive impairment diagnosis, about 50% of them will convert to Alzheimer's dementia. The other 50% will just kind of struggle with memory, and they could take a memory enhancing class at their local senior center, or I play Lumosity. I don't know what it's doing, but frustrating me sometimes. But anyway, I play games. Some computer games do help our brains. So we can do things to change our lifestyle also, if we get that early diagnosis, to stave off the progression of the illness. So it gives you an opportunity to have a higher quality of life for a longer period of time.
I think my wife might say I have mild cognitive impairment. There's a lot of, Hannah, I told you that last week. I'm like, no, you didn't. I swear that there's a lot of times she'll just tell me she told me something when she never did, just because she knows that I probably don't remember.
Because I've done a lot of couples counseling, what you might tell her to do is, after she tells you something that's important, to have you repeat it back to her. What did I just tell you, Nate?
I think this comes
and you're going to say,
oh yeah, we joke about this all the time. I think it's a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
About the different ways men's and women's brains work. Ours are more like waffle squares, and women's are more like spaghetti, meaning like one thought rolls into another and you really can't tell, they're all intertwined. Whereas guys, I can literally be in a square of waffle and my syrup does not go over the next one. I'm in the work waffle right now. And if you don't get me out of that waffle before you tell me something, you may as well just chalk that under, you never even told me. That's kind of how that works, I think.
But you know what's really important is to know ourselves. And if you know that about yourself and your wife knows that about yourself, she better wait to 7 o'clock before she tells you her mother's coming to visit for 3 weeks.
Oh, that would be crazy. She lives here in town.
Maybe her house got flooded.
Exactly.
It always happens.
She's a great babysitter, though. Okay. So let's say we start to recognize some of these red flags. We start to notice that, maybe grandma's repeating herself all the time, or she's losing her keys and blaming you for it. How do we initiate that conversation?
I have my book, The Empowered Caregiver, is really inexpensive on Amazon. But as my daughters told each other and my son, read page 6 of Mom's book. And on page 6, this is the advice: don't tell your parent or grandparent or even your spouse what they should do. You really should get your memory checked, Mom. No, Mom, I'm worried about you because you're missing some appointments and stuff. Should we go find out what's causing that? It could be your blood sugar, it could be anything. So instead of saying, let's go get your memory checked, let's give hope in there that it's something that could be treated. And that is the truth as well. So don't stay away from the word should. I mean, if there's any advice, if you want to avoid resistance to anything, especially a diagnosis, eliminate the should. And I was just working with a family this last week, and the mother wants a drug that makes her feel good, and Kaiser won't give it to her. So my approach as a care manager will be, when I work with her or one of my colleagues works with her, is I know you want to get that drug, but you know what? There are some better drugs that the memory clinic can give you. So let's go there. Let's not go to mental health. Let's go to the memory clinic and see if we can't get those brand new drugs for you. Now she wants something, so I'm connecting with her for her goal. So what is the goal of that person? And to be realistic again, a lot of older adults that have gone down this long journey have seen their friends get Alzheimer's disease, and they don't want to go down it, so they deny it in themselves, especially Alzheimer's. As I said earlier, most of the people that have Alzheimer's disease, the majority of the time, they deny there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a challenge, and it takes a strategy built upon you being, I don't want to say respectful and not so pushy in wanting to get things done. And I would encourage people that are having any pushback now or resistance to get the advice of a professional to help you build a strategy to make it successful.
Okay. So page 6 of your book, The Empowered Caregiver. And
yes.
So I think what we'll also do is we'll get some copies of that, and we'll have that as a giveaway as well. And so for anyone that wants a copy of that, they can actually email asknate@retirementrescueradio.com. If you copy and paste a review, like if you leave a review for our podcast, honest review, right, in the podcast, copy and paste that into that email, we'll be able to, and request that book, we'll send that to you. So, yeah. And I think at the end, we'll have some other things that you're willing to give away too. So you're just giving away a bunch of stuff for people to help them out. So it's very, very generous. Yeah. And so it's more of going back to the question. And so it's more taking the approach of the, not you should, but, I'm concerned, or, putting it back on ourselves.
I'm worried, I'm concerned, and what you're concerned or worried about. And if they tell you, you don't have to worry about that. Dad, you've lost about 50 pounds. You don't have to worry about that. It's like, well, I'm concerned you might not be able to take care of mom, So your concerns keep moving. You forget the weight because he told you no. Yep. And then caring about mom. So yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I always tell people it's don't should on people. That's kind of what it is. Don't go shooting on people. Yeah.
Yeah. It really in this age of challenging issues for families, I think that's the first one to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think all of us have a little bit of maybe a personality bent to where if somebody tells us that we should do something, automatically, I think one of our first responses is to push back on that. So,
yeah. We're fiercely independent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go through maybe a little bit of a scenario here. So let's say there's someone they're an only child. Mom's got mild dementia, and it's been okay, but now it's starting to get worse. And so how do you really have that conversation with dad about, now this is more care that you can provide, so we might have to do something else?
Well, I think you have that conversation with dad, not in front of mom, of course, and ask him how instead of even going there yet, ask him how he's doing. Are you sleeping, Dad? How is it for you caring for mom? And I love this lady. I'm going to take care of her to the day I die. Mm-hmm. Well, Dad, we don't want you to die caring for mom. Let's see if we could find some ways to get you back to golfing and seeing your buddies once a week for coffee. You've given that up. And Dad says, he grumbles, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've already done your homework. You've talked to a geriatric care manager or the local senior center, and you know that there's a great day program for people like your mom. And say, Dad, mom could be better if she's out socializing and doing the activities with these other people. You wouldn't want to deny her getting better Well, she never liked groups of people. Well, she's different now, Dad, and it's kind of like a prescription. You don't want to withhold that prescription from her. Okay, we could try it, so he says. And then you take mom to a daycare program. And sometimes you start with baby steps with getting the caregiving parent to accept getting care someplace else. This is another male female thing, Nate. All us women that had children, we took our children to kindergarten. We might have cried when they closed the door and pushed us away and told us to go home, but we did it, right? Dad was at work. He didn't have to deal with that. He heard that you were emotional and thinks you're silly. So we're used to turning over care. Guys, lots of older men really have more difficulty turning over care to a day program or to placement. Sometimes it gets to that point that dad is 80 and he can't do it anymore. And he has to find another alternative for mom. And that might be a memory care unit someplace because she's up all night. He's exhausted. And it's just time for a major change. But if you start with your suggestions, especially when you have your both parents, one being the caregiver, I think if you start in baby steps, you'll get to you and your siblings think dad needs to put mom in memory care today. You're just tired of seeing your dad look like he does, and he needs to do that. Start small, maybe bring in a caregiver twice a week, a daycare program twice a week. That's 4 days where he has a block of time off. And then that's not going to be enough because she's still up all night. And then you can move to a placement.
Okay. So let's take a little different, maybe an opposite scenario now where they're instead of only child, now there's lots of siblings involved. They all have maybe a little bit of a different opinion on what needs to happen where, or who might end up taking care of them, who might need to foot more of the bill or less of the bill or whatever. You've probably heard lots of conversations there. How do you manage, or how do you work with that type of situation? What would you recommend for people that are in that scenario?
If the majority of you on the same page, you could have a family meeting without a mediator. If you're not, if one of you feels really strongly about dad's doing just fine or mom's doing just fine, I don't know what you guys are talking about, I suggest you bring in a mediator. It often is a geriatric care manager who will hold the family meeting with you. And what I do, and I'm going to give you 2 questions so you can do it on your own if you feel like you're almost on the same page. But 2 questions to ask everybody in the family, just the siblings. Sometimes I have the well spouse, if they're concerned about one of the others, join us. But most of the time it's just the siblings. And I ask these 2 questions. I want each of you to answer these 2 questions, and no one else could comment as you give these answers. And we're just going to go around the circle. I'm going to consider that there's 4 people in there and me. And the person that invited me is going to be the last person to speak. So I go around this circle and I say, who are you most concerned about? And what would you like the outcome of today's meeting to be? So each person says, I'm concerned about mom's hygiene and her personal care. The next person says, I'm concerned about her safety because she's been scammed, and I would like us to take over mom's finances. That's their goal. Like the other person might say, I just want a bath aide to come and give mom a bath twice a week. And then the third person says, I'm really concerned about mom's boyfriend. If we move her to retirement community, that boyfriend that lives next door, he's a widower, she's a widow, they won't have each other anymore. And he doesn't drive, she doesn't drive, we'll end their relationship. I'd like to find a solution that they could stay in, she could stay in her own home and still have that relationship with her boyfriend next door. And maybe the fourth person says, you know, I think mom's just fine. I don't think we need to do anything. Yeah, she's been scammed, but I just keep reminding her not to give her personal information on the telephone. I'll talk to her every night. And so no one else can comment on these things. So what happens then is, if you have somebody that's mediating the meeting, or not mediating, conducting, because mediation really implies that there's some conflict, but I could come up with, well, what's most important? What do you guys think is most important of all the issues? And maybe it's her personal hygiene. I mean, I once saw a client that probably hadn't had a shower, or both of them were demented, the husband and the wife. They had an only son. And she hadn't washed her hair for probably a year or two. It was totally matted to the top of her head. The house was neat, but there was a layer of dirt on everything. It was the most amazing home I've ever seen. And it took a lot of steps to get an intervention there, but I only had one child to work with, so we could deal with it. But this family, when it's mom's hygiene, that might be the thing we need to start with first. And whatever it is. And then what's the second thing? The scamming. If mom loses all of her assets, how would she pay for long-term care? And what are the legal tools that mom set up? Does she have a living trust? Is the house named in it? Has one of us been named to be her agent in that trust, or her successor trustee? Or does she have a bank? We know nothing about mom's legal documents. I think we need to find that out. So we start with the most important things. And then, if they're dealing with somebody who's their consultant, they're going to give her, here's some elder law attorneys, here's some financial planners, here's some housing options. Because mom has a medical issue, maybe she has new incontinence, we can get Medicare to pay for that. And these are things that families don't know, because it's a new issue, and mom's housebound because of her arthritis, and now she's incontinent. We can get Medicare to pay for a nurse to come in and work with us and her around that incontinence. So there's so much that can be done in one family meeting. And again, if you have a resource that or a consultant that knows the resources and also knows the entitlements, that's the other thing. People are entitled to things like VA benefits. Maybe there's a mom and dad's retired from, you have to have been in one of the wars. Mm-hmm. No, not in the war. You had to have been in the military during a war, a declared war. And then there's benefits that are open to both mom, if she's a widow and meets the criteria for money, to get a home care worker to come in and help her. So not everybody knows all these things. So again, getting a consultant that can get you on the right page, find the resources you need, and also reduce some of the stress. If there's conflict in a family, there's stress among at least one or two of those siblings. They're worried constantly, or they got the stomach ache all the time. I have this other little exercise that I can use with siblings that want to get the help of one of the others that they're not getting with the parent. Do you want me to go over that, Nate?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. It's called the FIRR method, FIRR. And the first, I'm going to use my own mother and brother as an example. The FIRR is for the facts. Mom has to take a blood thinner every single night. She's not remembering them. So the facts are, I'm calling her every night. So the I in FIRR is the impact on you. So I'm working full time. I've got a husband, I've got grandkids, I've got community responsibilities. I need some help calling mom every night. The first R in FIRR is respect. So find something in that sibling's life that you respect that might keep them from helping mom. So with my brother, he was on a lot of pain medication. He could not drive my mother anywhere safely because of his back pain. And he only lived a few miles from her. I lived 30 miles from her. So I was calling every night, exhausted, and my mother would talk about the senior center and what they had and what kind of just frosting was on the cake. And I was falling asleep on those phone calls. And so the last R in FUR is the result you want. So after I said to Gary, hey, Gary, I know you take those pain pills and you can't really take mom for appointments or anything, but could you call her 3 nights a week, say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night, and give me a break? That's all. That was the result I wanted. And it was an easy yes. So the difference in this ask of a sibling or somebody that you might be in disagreement with is you found that area of respect. And you said what you respect in their life. My granddaughter, when she was about 15, was at a class I was teaching, and she came to me after the class and she said, hey, Grandma, can I use that FUR thing on my friends? I said, sure, on her girlfriends. And she came back to me and says, it does work. So anyway, it does work for other situations, but definitely trying to get a sibling to help you in the caregiving that has been resistant or has a lot of stuff going on in their life. Find something they can do for you, like a call.
Perfect. Okay. And we are coming up on our time here, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of that. You've definitely shared a lot, and I feel like there's even, other directions we might even be able to go with this, but I want to make sure that we get where we need. And there is some things that you've got in addition to your book and that FUR method that you just mentioned there. There were a couple other things I think you were willing to give for a lot of our listeners. So go ahead and give those if you'd like.
I have a list of questions that I developed very early in my career when I was running an Alzheimer respite program called How to Communicate the Do's and Don'ts of Dementia Conversation. And it starts with don't try to reason with your family member. But anyway, have those 10 and why you do them. And then I also have the loving kindness meditation. I didn't create it, and it's been created by somebody anonymous. The very simple meditation that you can do. You could even do it when you're driving, as long as you don't close your eyes. So something to help you get in that moment that I told you was so important. So loving kindness meditation, how to communicate with somebody with dementia, the FUR method. It's better to have that demonstrated to you than in writing, but I'll send it to Nate so he has it in case you want it. And then my book, it's not expensive. So I know Nate's willing to give you one. So that's great news.
Yes.
For all of you
and
listeners.
We'll link to it too. So if we end up running out, because we'll give them out until they're gone. But then after that, if somebody wants one, then they can go on to Amazon.
Terrific.
Okay. Well, great. So a couple real fast lightning questions, I guess, maybe. Well, one of them I'd like to know, share one of the greatest ideas that you think you've had and how you were able to lead that to or make that into some kind of a success.
Well, my greatest idea was working with all the families that I work with. The people in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease and early dementia were really feeling sad, and there was no place for them. So I created a program for people in the early stage of dementia, and the one for women and one for men, because as Nate talked about, Mars and Venus, we're still from Mars and Venus if we have aging brains.
Yep.
And the women's group was called The Club, and they did ladies club things, and they went out into the community and did volunteer work, and they felt great about themselves. And the men was called The Company, of course. And so these guys got together and they would talk about their shared experiences. They didn't do quite the things the ladies did, but they would go tour a aircraft carrier or do something that's more male oriented. So they actually went out into the community and did things too. They volunteered as well. And I was given the highest award at my university for my community service for that. I was also commended by the US Senate and by my state legislature. I have all these little trophies around that accomplishment. It was probably the first program, definitely in the Bay Area. I'm not sure about across the country for early stage dementia.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations on that. That sounds great. Okay.
Thank you.
And so what would you say? I always ask this question. So let's fast forward 20 years from now. What would you like if you're looking back 20 years from now, what would you like to look back and have it be considered absolutely absurd? Meaning when you look back, you're like, man, I can't believe we used to X, whatever that is.
I think put people in skilled nursing. I don't think people need medical model, a hospital-like setting to live the end of their life in. I think it could be eliminated.
Yeah. Good deal. Well, what would be one of the best places for people to find you? If they wanted to see you, if they wanted to have you be the hub of their wheel and get, I guess, sent out to the different resources based on whatever needs they have.
Right. Probably my website. It's just Linda Fodrini-Johnson without the hyphen. To run it all together, lindafodrini-johnson.com.
Okay. And we go ahead.
And it also shows you the free Zoom classes I do as well.
Excellent. Excellent. We will definitely link to that as well. So we've got tons of giveaways there, the book, the FIR method, the list on how to communicate with someone with dementia, and the loving kindness meditation. So when you leave that as a listener, if you leave that review in iTunes and then you copy and paste it, when you request, put whichever one of those you're requesting, or if you're requesting all of them, and then we'll be able to send those. And so if you want the book, we'll send a physical copy there. So we need your address as well to send that to you.
Yeah. It's pretty too.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Okay. Well, Linda, any other parting pieces of advice that you would like to give our listeners before we go?
Stay well, be vaccinated, I guess. And find gratitude is another thing. Every day at the end of each day, think about what you're grateful for.
Great advice. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.